Education has been not only in the news, but on the agenda of two administrations, at least two recent administrations at the national level. Race to the top is currently on the agenda, and we all know what's happening, or many of us know what's happening in that arena, and certainly the Bush administration also had its agenda in education. Locally, it's one of the areas that unites all of us in this community. The Mamaroneck school system is shared by those in the village, the two villages in the town, and we're certainly interested in hearing what is happening this year now. I'm sure the program will be good.
We have in our presence two distinguished individuals, young ladies, who are representing two school districts, Mamaroneck School District and Mamaroneck School District. As we always said, what is unique about this particular area, especially in the village of Mamaroneck, is that you have three municipalities, three governments, and you have pretty much two school districts that run very independently and are very old. Since 1853, when the New York State Legislature decided that the Union-Free School Districts can form Mamaroneck and Rye-Neck, which was the Union-Free School District town of Rye, and Mamaroneck, the Union-Free School District town of Mamaroneck, joined forces with the state and formulated what was called the Rye-Neck School District and the Mamaroneck School District. And out of that, we've had some very unique educational experiences for over 150 years. And in our presence, Dr. Ferrara and Liz Klain are going to give a presentation of our prospective high school. I'm going to give you just a very brief historical aspect of how the high schools came about. Rye-Neck formulated in 1857, and they built what was called then the Barry Avenue School, which was the first structure in Rye-Neck. Those of you that are familiar with the civilization settlement in the village of Mamaroneck, everything that is on the left side of the Mamaroneck River is called Rye-Neck, even though it's the village of Mamaroneck. And everything on the right side of that is Mamaroneck. So that actually became the border of what was considered then our school districts. And with the Barry Avenue School being built in let me get my facts together. With the Barry Avenue School being built in 1858, that became then the first high school or school structure in what was called the village of Mamaroneck. And Frederick E. Bellows was the first superintendent and principal. Now, prior to 1931, all of the superintendents in what was considered the New York area were considered by the county. They had what was called a county superintendent. Doc, am I correct? Thank you. I have my reference base here. So Rye-Neck joined armed forces in 1931, but they did that long prior to that. So Frederick Bellows, who the high school was named after, was built on Carroll Avenue in 1923. Mr. Bellows was the headmaster and superintendent from Rye-Neck from 1892 up until 1931. And then after that, he continued to be the superintendent. That's a long time, folks, okay? So saying that, what about Effie Bellows? Mr. Bellows was first principal, and now we have Dr. Barbara Ferrara. Dr. Ferrara came to Rye-Neck in 1990, and as of 2000, as the principal of Rye-Neck High School. Now I'm going to say this, because those of you who do know me and know about my family, being one of the oldest in this area, my family was part of the Mamaroneck School District. My mother and father had the ability to purchase a house in the Rye-Neck area, so half of my siblings graduated from Mamaroneck. Myself, my brother, and a couple of my others relatives graduated from Rye-Neck. So I'm a 1972 graduate of Rye-Neck High School. So I'm very proud to present Dr. Barbara Ferrara. She's the principal of Rhinebeck High School, and as of 2000, she became then also, she has a double duty of being the assistant superintendent of curriculum. So the next speaker is Dr. Barbara Ferrara.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Keith. Is it better to use
Yes.
this one? Or
No, it's better to use
this
that
one?
one.
Okay. The other one?
Oh, the other one?
That was
Okay.
coming and going.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for having us this morning, and both Liz and I are very pleased to talk to you about our high schools. And the question we were posed this morning was how are high schools preparing students for the 21st century? And we're both eager to talk about that and let you understand how those things are evolving in both of our schools. But as I begin a conversation about 21st century skills, I always like to frame it a little bit and talk about what that means to us. So beginning that, what we look for in 21st century skills in our schools are creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, and communication and collaboration. And keeping those ideas in mind, that drives our curriculum, our planning for our students, and the way we construct our business here in our schools. So how do these skills manifest themselves in our high schools? Well, firstly, we both have for ourselves a challenging and rigorous curriculum that provides opportunities for our students, and those opportunities should lead to self-directed, lifelong learning with students who understand the global environment in which they will work and live. And those are the kinds of programs that we need to develop for our students. Of course, always under the auspices of the New York State curriculum and now the Common Core learning standards, which are driving our planning. To enable students to learn in relevant real-world contexts through project-based and applied learning. I'd like to come back to those phrases, project-based and applied learning. That's really what's different, and that's really important for us so that our students can begin to integrate those 21st century skills to problem solving, creativity, innovation, communication, collaboration. So as I was thinking about speaking with you this morning, I don't want to present to you our high school course catalog. That's not on the agenda today, but I thought I'd speak about some of the highlights which address the 21st century skills and how they might look in our high school today, and hopefully those things will evolve and change as we move forward. So what does it look like in Rhinebeck High School? One of the things we did a couple of years ago, we have a core, one class per day in our 9th grade curriculum that has evolved over the many years I've been with the high school. But 2 years ago, we stepped back, we thought about 21st century skills, and we thought about what can we do for our students to give them an exposure to some of the things that they will need as they move through the grades. So we took our core, which is one class a day, and we broke it up in a couple of different ways. And we call this our 21st century block, which supports our Common Core learning standards and 21st century skills. All of our 9th grade students are put into an applied statistics course, public speaking, and global awareness. Let me take a minute to explain our thinking behind that. The applied statistics. There's a lot of data coming at our kids right now. We want our children to understand what that data means. They have to be skilled in how to understand, interpret, question. Throughout that course, kids are presented with data, no matter what it is, and we push their thinking. We want them not to accept what's told. We don't want them to accept what they see. We want them to start to ask questions. It's a great place for 9th graders. It's low risk. They can have fun with it. They can be creative with it. And their teacher is fabulous in getting them to just question the things that they see. They need to do that as they leave our high school into college and careers. Public speaking. Communication is really important for us. Our children in our 9th grade, our children who've grown up with technology and computers, they've lost some of this, what we're doing right now, some of this public face. They don't know how to communicate one-on-one in the human arena. So we've put this in place for them, and we give them exposure as 9th graders to have an opportunity to organize their thoughts, to use the research that they've done, and to communicate with fellow students, with the community at large. Global awareness. That's really kind of a spin on what probably we knew as current events in schools, but right now it's more than that. We have to expand it, have kids ask questions, what's happening in the world, and certainly all those parts of the world which were not part of my growing up, but parts of what our children need to learn. So that is another part of this core that we put our students in ninth grade. It's exposure, it's thinking, it's getting them to solve problems and ask questions. And it's a good introduction to the high school course of study that they'll be exposed to. So moving from that, today I thought I'd highlight some of the things that perhaps are a little unique to Rhinebeck and have really fit into this whole 21st century framework. One of the things that we've had for many years is our senior intern program. It's actually right now in its 16th year. We concluded the 15th year last year. The senior intern program is a requirement for every senior in our high school. They spend the last either quarter or 5 weeks, depending on their schedule. Students who are taking advanced placement courses don't begin their internship, obviously, until after their AP classes are concluded and their examinations. But the rest of the students will begin at the beginning of the fourth quarter. This puts students into the community, working in internships with mentors in the field here in Westchester County and the surrounding areas, Manhattan, Connecticut, wherever we can make the connection. The skills emphasized in the classroom during their 4 years now come to fruition in an applied situation. Organization, personal responsibility, problem solving, communication, time management are now put into practice in the field. The fields that our students are in are things like law, accounting, public service, marketing, medicine, government, and a whole host of things. Each year we publish a booklet, and I'll leave it here for the summit to take a look at, but this booklet highlights our students, the mentors, and the kind of work that they're doing out in the field. It's a course, it's part of their school program, so it's not that we say goodbye and go out into the field and you're done. We have teachers that go out into the field and talk with the mentors and the students. The students have projects to bring back to us where they have to present to the community, their mentor, their families, their school, their teachers. And it's an outline of the kinds of skills that they've gained out in the experience, what have they learned, and we really emphasize reflective practice, which is a need as they move into college and careers. So that's our senior intern program. We have an independent learner program in our school district, and you may have noticed in the Westchester Magazine this past month that 2 Rhinebeck students were highlighted. That's part of the independent learner program. The independent learner program for us we begin to grow it way down in elementary school with our students. In 2000, we moved away from what was known as the traditional gifted and talented program in our district into an enrichment model, and the enrichment model is a talent development model based upon the research of Joseph Renzulli. It's a 3-tier model. We introduce our students to an exploratory process in the elementary school where we get them to explore different interests, help them to identify their talents. As they move through the middle school, they're into a Tier 2 project, a Tier 2 phase of the project. They do project-based learning. All of our 7th and 8th graders are put into a project-based learning course where they begin to refine their thinking a little bit, maybe begin to identify more clearly what their interests might be. And then as they move through the high school, they have the opportunity, if it appeals to them. It's not required by all students, but if it appeals to them, perhaps we build on that interest and/or talent with a 4-year research project that ends up in an independent learning project. And as you may have seen, highlighted in the magazine are 2 of the students. One is a student who's been working with LMC-TV for many years, Remy. And Remy has directed and produced a show which airs monthly on LMC called Rhinebeck Students Above and Beyond. And it's amazing for this young man because not only is filmmaking an interest of his, but he produces, he directs, he sets the script for what's going to happen. He has to manage all the pieces and get this on LMC each month. We're very proud of him. This is his most recent endeavor. He started out as a documentarian and did some highlighting programs. But that again shows the connection, not only of a child's interest and someone who can guide that for him, but then the community support that he gets through LMC to be able to do that. And then we had another student who's interested in global issues, and she got involved in a humanitarian project back in her middle school, Amanda, and she carried that through her senior year. So we would have our students develop that kind of independent learning, which again leads into and supports the 21st century skills that students need in coming up with a creative idea, understanding how to problem solve for it, and then being able to manage all the pieces, communicating with those in charge, and collaborating with others in order to bring the project to fruition. One of the things that we have been fortunate to be involved in, and Keith said earlier that we were part of the town of Rye. As Rye-Neck being part of the town of Rye, we had an opportunity last year through the Rye Town Council to participate in a program called Building Community Bridges, Tools for Change. You're aware of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And that's been a remarkable project because it involves our 3 schools in the Rye town, and our students participate in a social science research project with a professor from Duke University, Dr. Bill Tobin, who works with the students, first teaching them social science research, then putting them out into the field so that they can solve real-world problems. The project they were involved with was voter turnout. So we looked at voter turnout in the town of Rye. This was a collaboration between the town of Rye and the League of Women Voters and the 3 schools. And we had 14 students from Rye-Neck High School participating in this program. They were instructed by Dr. Tobin in social science research, and the final end of a year's worth of research and study ended up in a presentation of their findings to the Rye Town Council. They gained a lot of very practical experience putting together or putting into practice what they've learned in the classroom. And probably in summary, when we talk about 21st century skills, the shift is, are we giving students the opportunity to take what they learn? Both of our schools have rigorous, challenging academic programs. Now in the 21st century, as we move toward that framework, we want to make certain that our students have the opportunity to take what they've learned and put it into practice in fields. And then in closing, I'd like to just add that we have other activities within our schools which we call either co-curricular or extracurricular. As long as those activities, and one is in mind, I have in mind right now because we're in the throes of the middle of it. It's the mock trial team, which is supported by the Westchester County Bar Association. All of our schools in the county participate in that. But as I watch the children go through that competition, prepare for their case, to go in front of their, to compete and go in front of the judges at the county courthouse, the children learn real-world skills, take with them the analysis of a case, do the research, put together what I mentioned earlier about 9th grade. How do we research? How do we ask questions? How do we present and communicate? And this activity, which is long-standing in all of our communities, really is framed in the 21st century platform. So it's those kinds of things that we're looking at as school administrators to make certain that our students have the opportunities to take what they have from us, be successful, be college and career ready when they leave us, and that is always changing and moving in the direction that we need it to move in. So thank you for the opportunity to be with you this morning, and I hope that outlines a little of what we're doing here at Rye-Neck. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Dr. Ferrara. If you can note your questions, we'll have a Q&A after our second speaker so they can jointly, you can ask the questions, they can answer them.
Could you just tell us what the size of the...
Oh, of course. Right now, Rye-Neck High School has 432 students.
Grades, 9
through 12.
9 through 12.
How many of those?
She's going to present that. Our next speaker is an esteemed colleague of mine. She came to Mamaroneck in 1995 as a social studies teacher, and she has been elevated to the position of principal of Mamaroneck High School. Briefly about Mamaroneck, as I indicated, Rye-Neck was formulated in 1857. Mamaroneck High School was formulated in 1855 as a result of the New York State Legislature allowing the schools to become union-free school districts. And some of you who travel along the harbor, you might see what is considered the first school. That was the first school. That's not the first high school. Okay? That is called the Mamaroneck. It was actually a kindergarten house eventually, what it evolved to, but it was just a regular one-room schoolhouse. The first school for Mamaroneck School District, those of you who are familiar with the geography of Mamaroneck, coming down Palmer Avenue, turning into Mount Pleasant, where Mount Pleasant meets Mamaroneck Avenue at Depot, which is obviously was the train stop. At that triangle right there was the first school for the Mamaroneck School District. They built the school in 1857, and up until 1888, in fact, they added additions on, but then eventually they destroyed the building because they built what was called then a new high school, which is presently our town center. Those of you who don't know, that was built, and that's what high upon the hill commanding means in our alma mater, valley, sea, and sky, which is overlooking everything. And I think I could see it from here. So that school was built in 1888. Our first principal, our headmaster at that time, was Mr. Samuel Preston. And he was there since 1882, but when the high school was formulated in 1888, and as I indicated, the county superintendent, well, Mamaroneck did something prior to Rhinebeck. Mamaroneck made their first superintendent in 1904. All right, but Samuel Preston, who was the headmaster, what they called him back then, was the first principal of Mamaroneck High School. And for years and years it evolved. Now in 1968, we had, well, 1923, they built what was then called the senior high school, because we had what was called traditionally junior and senior high school, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and the high school was 10th, 11th, and 12th. And that was traditional throughout maybe all over the county. Well, Mamaroneck, because of overpopulation and just running out of space, decided that they needed a middle school. So they built the Hommocks in 1968, and in September of 1968, the Mamaroneck Junior High School, which was built in 31, and the high school presently, which was built in 1926, consolidated. Now they were still two separate buildings. Eventually they built an overpass, and now, those of you who don't know, it just looks like one great big high school. It looks like a college campus. But similar to Rhinebeck, and I forgot, and I omitted Rhinebeck because I'm going to say this, their high school, Effie Bellows, was built, but then they moved the high school, they purchased property on Hornage Road and became the first split-level high school. Now, I'm used to running those hallways at the Mamaroneck Junior High School, up and down those stairs. When I got to Rhinebeck and saw A corridor, and A corridor dock at one time wasn't doored off, it was a long, we used to train in there, all right? When it was inclement weather, rainy weather, they said, we're going inside, and we'd rather be outside because A corridor was longer than our football field. So that was the history of Rhinebeck. And Mamaroneck, in 1968, they consolidated the junior high and the senior high, and they built the Hommocks presently, which is over there off of Hommocks Road. And presently, we have our new principal. And I'm very proud to say our very new principal, because she was elevated from the ranks of a teacher to a principal. And I introduce to you Miss Liz Klain.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Barbara. I think Barbara gave us a good introduction to what it means to be, what it means to be a 21st century learner. But I think one of the things about 21st century learning and teaching is that we really don't know what our own children are going to face 20 years, 30 years from now. I think a lot of the traditional professions that we've been preparing students for, like lawyers and doctors, and things that our parents were very proud if we became, yes, they will continue to go into those fields, but they're fields that we simply cannot imagine what our children are going to end up in. And I think that's part of the challenge of teaching in this particular, at this particular time. And that is a challenge, but it's also a very exciting moment, I think, in education. So this year, every year, Mamaroneck High School, along with the other schools in the district, are given, we create goals that we are working on over the course of the year. And this year, one of the goals that Mamaroneck High School has articulated is the goal that we're calling authentic learning, which I think is very relevant to this issue of 21st century learning. So I'm just going to read to you what our goal is for this year. One of our goals is to increase opportunities for students to engage in inquiry-based authentic learning within and beyond the classroom, and to identify and share best practices and design new approaches in and out of classrooms. So that's it's a big, very lofty goal. And with the faculty, what we did was we spent a day articulating, well, what does that mean? What does authentic learning look like? And as a faculty, we then defined what that meant. And for many people, it meant that there's ownership for the learning that's taking place in a classroom. That critical thinking, as Barbara said, is very important and is something that no matter what you're going into is going to be a skill that we all think is very important. That students are grappling with real life problems. And that another last one is that it is experiential. So to the best of our ability that we are providing classrooms where students are working with their hands, working with their heads, having discussions, and that the passive classrooms that I think many of us experienced, we're really, really trying to move away from. So that's one of our goals as a school for this particular year. And it's manifesting itself in different ways over the course of the year. It's conversations are taking place in between teachers. Faculty meetings are taking place around this particular, again, I think it's a very lofty goal, and it's a goal that certainly at the end of the year isn't going to be dropped. It's something that we should be continuing, really, as far as I'm concerned, for as long as I'm there. But I will also add that it's a goal that in this environment of high-stakes testing, when there's so much discussion about testing, I think it's even more important that we, as an administration, really keep on reminding our faculty these are the things that we think are very important. And while testing has a place, this is what we value, and that was very, very clear as we spoke about this with our faculty. We do need to pay attention to the data, and we do need to pay attention to the tests, but these are the things that we think are the core values of our school. Okay, so with that said, we're a little bit behind. I'm going to just talk again, like Barbara did, about some of the things that we have in place and some of the things that we're trying to put in place. We do not have an internship program for 16 years like they have at Rhinebeck. However, this is something that we think is important, and the community, a number of people in the community have spoken to me about this before I became principal, and so we are piloting a program. We're in the process of placing students right now. And so it's an exciting moment for us. We're going to have 30 students out in the community working in a variety of different programs we do have somebody in an architectural firm, but we also have people in the bike shop in New Rochelle. I was really pushing things like plumbing, because I think that somebody who can come fix my pipes, that's always great. So we have somebody who's looking for an internship with a plumber. So we've got kids who are doing a range of different types of internships. And again, the reason we think that this is important, and this is voluntary, I know that in some schools there are mandatory programs, and we don't know where we're heading. The thought of placing 350 students is completely daunting to me at this point, as we're trying to place 30 of them. I don't know how you could ever do that. But what we are clear about is we want to make this a meaningful experience for these students for the 5 weeks that they are not in school, but involved in this experiential learning. One of the things that we're very, very proud of at Mamaroneck High School is our original science research program. So this is a program where students enter in 9th grade, and they learn many of the skills that Barbara spoke about in her 9th grade program. It's a voluntary program, and it would be an elective for a student. Some students take it in addition to another elective. It's a lot of work. But basically they enter in 9th grade learning many of the research skills that would be necessary to do serious science research. In 10th grade they continue with those research skills and then begin to look for a mentor. And then in their junior year they begin their research very seriously, and senior year usually they have some kind of a project to show for it. So we've had a tremendous amount of success. I'll speak about this personally for a moment because I have a child who has gone through that program. He's a senior right now. And one of the things that I have found really amazing about the program is the relationship that he has formed with the mentor. So when all is said and done, I would say that my son's research project is, I don't know that that was the thing that was so, that this culminating project was so amazing. But what I do know is that the relationship that he has made with this scientist who took him under his wing and met with him weekly, and really, I believe, has taught him a graduate level course in, I don't even know what they were studying, honestly. Like, he would just go off with these textbooks, but I do know that according to the mentor, it was graduate level work. This is something that there is no way that it could have happened in the high school. It was a gift. I truly believe that the mentor, has spent a huge amount of time. It was a gift to my son. And I think that in large part when he heads off to college and he is interested in the science, I mean, that's what he's thinking that he's going to do. I think in large part it is because of this relationship and this gentleman who turned him onto science in a way that I think is amazing. And he did work in his lab, so there was a project that came out of it, but the relationship to me was the thing that I thought was truly amazing. We have that OSR program. We have I think one of the other programs that we have that is very, very important in our school is the transitional program that we have for our special education population, so that as students who are graduating with special needs are trying to, and their parents are trying to figure out what will the next step be for these children, for these young adults really. We have somebody, Kristen Macaluza, in place who is a transitional counselor who will help figure out what's that next step, who will place our students into some kind of training programs, who will help these students find internships. And I think that's a very, very important program as we enter into our 21st century. So, we have these programs outside of the classrooms, but I think ultimately what's most important is what's happening in the classroom on a day-to-day basis. And which is why I want to just get back to a discussion about this inquiry-based and the learning and this idea of critical thinking. Ultimately, we need our students to walk out and to be able to identify a problem, to be able to figure out what are the issues surrounding that problem, who they need to speak to regarding a problem, and then how to set about solving a particular problem. Now, I'll tell you up front, I bring with me a bias of being a social studies teacher. So part of my goal and long-term goal in the school is part of what I think is very important to be a 21st century citizen is that we have a citizenry that stands up, and that in the face of wrong, in the face of evil, in the face of maliciousness, that they know that they have an obligation to stand up. And I think that is critical in this 21st century. So how do we do that? That's a very, very tough skill, and it's not a skill. I think it's a value that we're embedding in students. One of the ways I think we do that is to keep on having discussions in classrooms, and there are certain classrooms that lend themselves to that more readily, like social studies and like English classrooms. But I do think in science, bioethics, I've sat in a number of classes this year where part of what has been discussed is the ethical nature of something in science, and getting students to think about those things. I know right now, for example, the social studies, I sat in on their department meeting recently where the discussion was, how are we going to deal with Coney? So I'm sure many of you have heard about this video that has gone completely viral. And for social studies, they're seeing this as a moment where what they can do is they can use it as a moment to have students look at something critically, and to look at this video and this discussion of what's going on in Uganda, and to figure out, well, why, first of all, are people so attracted to this video? Why has it gone, I'm getting that little note, why has it gone viral? But then also, how do we know whether it's authentic? How do we know whether to believe this? What part of it can we believe? What would we need to do as citizens and as people who are being bombarded with information all the time? And this is the other part of what we've got to do for our students, is to figure out how to create a lens for them to figure out what they are reading, and what, for many of them, what they're seeing and listening to is in fact reality. Is it somewhat real? And I think, you know, that is one of the things that we're trying to teach them. So we took, most of the students who went, I would say, were Democrats. And we took them, and each one of those students joined a campaign up there and engaged in unbelievable conversation. So I was privileged enough to have gone on that trip with them. And what was amazing to me was, well, it was a little scary because, as I said, you can see how fascism can really take off, because you give someone a sign, you give them a chant, and the next thing you know, they're chanting for someone. But the students, what I loved about it was that the students, yeah, they did some of that, but then they turned around and they asked somebody from the Mitt Romney campaign, what is it about what is it about Mitt Romney that you're attracted to? What is it about Newt Gingrich that you think is makes him a viable candidate? So the conversations that kids were engaged in were authentic, and I think very important for those of us who are going to be voting in this 21st century. All right, so that's it for me. Sorry, Kate.
As we know, the theme of today is how our high schools are preparing our students for the future success. And with that, I believe that our school districts are in a way preparing. I'm an employee of Mamaroneck School District. I've been there close to 30 years. And as I said, as a product of the Mamaroneck schools and the Rhinebeck school system, very unique. Very unique. And in my travels, whether it's going through educational conferences, just social, economic, whatever, there is a preparation in this particular area that there are plenty of resources, and if you take advantage of them, it can be done. I don't know how many people in here have students. I know there's some people here, I'm familiar with a lot of folks in this room, who've had children grow up. I know there's some folks who went through these school districts. Okay, you have to be very pleased with what was the outcome. And if you're not pleased, I think that the doors, that's one of the things that's unique about our school districts, is that the doors are always open. I don't think there was a closed door. There might be what you call differences. You're going to have differences everywhere you go. But still, in terms of that, the doors are always open from our superintendents, Dr. Mustick and Dr. Shaps. Those of you who were here 3 months ago, you heard a very excellent presentation. And the budget vote is coming up, and it's very important. I think that's why most of you are here in regard to that. So just remember one thing. In terms of our school, it's the first step. I am the first one. I'm not saying it because of my employment. I just say it because it's a life skill. All 4 of my children have graduated. And when I graduated, it was the proudest moment for my parents, okay? So, and they're out in life doing what they have to do. And it was excellently prepared by our school districts. So now, we're going to open the floor up for questions. Dr. Ferrara, Liz Klein, please, we're going to pass the mic around. So those of you who have questions, please. Identify yourself.
Carolyn Pomerantz. Andy, you've spoken some about preparing our kids for the real world, and a lot of this community is going, you know, our tri-municipal area is college bound. Can you speak a little bit about the kids who are not college bound, and how do we prepare them, and what do those programs look like in your different schools?
you want to start? Oh, okay. I'm going to start by saying the skills are the same, because as we start looking into the future, the 21st century skills that we're outlining about being good problem solvers, kids who know how to do research, kids who know how to be creative in their solving, they need those basic skills no matter what career path they're taking. And then as Liz mentioned, the internship program will give them another opportunity to explore those interests. Kids need the basic foundation of high school, and they need those basic skills that are here. And then the technical skills that they need can come kind of at the end of high school and beyond. We just need to prepare them with what they need in order to be able to cope well with the skills they need after high school and give them the exposure. So for us, and I'm pleased that Mamaroneck is also looking at the intern program. The intern program is really the beginning of where those kids would go, finding a mentor and working with those mentors, and oftentimes those intern programs turn into more of apprentice type programs for students in certain technical areas, and many of our students get extended internships, part-time positions, and some ultimately positions within after graduation. So that to me is how we're preparing our kids.
And I guess I would just add that you know, when I first got to Mamaroneck High School, there were programs that were auto mechanics and things like that. And I think for a variety of reasons, mostly financial reasons, and because a lot of that has become computerized and that's very expensive to maintain in a high school, a lot of those programs our students would then access through BOCES. So if a child is interested in a particular vocation, we do have a number of them who attend BOCES in the afternoon for a particular skill that they may be trying to acquire.
Jane first and you, Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
No. Okay, 1, 2, 3. That's in order.
Talking about,
Hold it right.
Hold it up.
talking about,
That was hot. That's it. Good.
I just shout. Anyway. Talking about vocational skills, I just want to raise the issue of the fact that I'm so proud of you for not talking about testing, but I have to say one thing, is that some of these young people have gone through our school system for many, many years feeling really defeated and really feeling like no one recognized what their skills are. And it's a little late when you suddenly recognize them in the middle of high school, that maybe they work well with their hands, maybe they can build, maybe they can do other things. So I hope that somehow in the future that will be considered, because it isn't just what the tests can do for you, it's also what they can do against you. And I had a son who went through this school system, and he felt defeated from day one. And I'll just give you one example, and then I'll stop. He got all excited in 5th grade because they were studying Egypt, and we had lived in the city, and he went through the mummies in the Metropolitan Museum almost every day to get to the playground. And he was so excited, and he came back 2 days later and said, they don't care about Egypt, they just care about reading and writing. And he was failing again. And I just want to put into it that this has to be a value that the whole school system has for our children, because we need all these talents that they have. And I have 2 sons who can build anything and can conceive of anything, and they failed throughout school. And they're not genetic brothers, but it was really a test.
Yes. Jane, give it to Jeremy, please.
I'd just like to make an unpaid public service announcement for Rhinebeck High School. With Washingtonville Housing Alliance, we have currently 2 staff members who are Rhinebeck High School graduates. One who came in as a summer intern and then came back at age 19, and we lived through her teenage years, and she's grown to maturity with us. One we've just hired post-college and starting out in the human services field. And then we had 2 other high school interns. One, we recently got a request for assistance in financing a trip to, I think, China, as she's now in her 5th year of an accounting degree at Pace, combined bachelor's, master's degree, so that's very exciting to see someone moving straight on. And then one who haunts me, because she was one of the top honor roll students and was undocumented, and you always wonder how that person, who was just superb, has made it forward in this very difficult environment. Even if she got to college for free, what then happened? I think the question about work readiness is an interesting question, and these kids were kids who could land in an office, look around, see what had to be done, pick up and get the thing done. It was very striking. One summer, we had an intern from Pace who was from India, who was in graduate school doing an MBA, and had floundered for 6 weeks, and we had our high school intern from Rhinebeck. And after we said goodbye to our Pace interns, and sorry, Ella, it just doesn't work like this, she picked up his files, knocked them into shape, and had everything done within 10 days. So it's a great program, and we're looking for someone this summer.
Behind you, Jeremy.
No comment, question.
Identify yourself, please.
Mel Shaker.
Thank you.
Are there any courses or teaching of kids in terms of handling their finances? In other words, the use of credit cards, people, purchasing houses with a no doc situation. I mean, in what way are you teaching kids prepared financially, economically for this session?
Well, that's a required course by New York State. It's called economics, and everyone is required to take it before graduation. It's a graduation requirement. And within that course of study, within that course, yes, within all of that, within that course of study is all issues of personal finance, and really the immediate of going off to college and what are they going to be faced then, and then into the future. So New York State is really very much in tune with that and really reinforces that for us.
Great.
What's unique about what Dr. Ferrara said is that it just brings me to the memory bank of a gentleman who was my economics teacher in 12th grade. His name was Mr. Conley, and we used to call him Uncle Tanoose because he reminded us of the guy who was in the Danny Thomas caricature. But everybody who took at Rhinebeck High School, who took economics, remember Mr. Conley. And my father, who's still alive, can remember this because Mr. Conley talked to my father in regards to me purchasing the New York Times every morning because of the fact that, and we had to get our father the Daily News and we had the Daily Times, but as a high school senior, I was required to buy the New York Times, which came, and at that time it was only 10 cents. And he told my father even he couldn't afford it, which he could have, he was going to get it for me. But I do remember that because I was able to do still my taxes, and to this day, whether I do it electronically or get the physical paper, I do read the New York Times. Elizabeth?
Thank you. When we first, I'm sorry, here, is this good? When we first chose Mamaroneck as a community to live in because of the diversity, all sorts of diversity, and that's tremendous value. But we discovered to our dismay when our kids were in the high school, the Homics in the high school, that there's a lot of internal segregation within the school, and the only time everybody gets together is maybe in gym class, PE class I should say, where it sometimes doesn't work out that well. And so I'm interested in how much common experience students have. I love the talk about the internship programs, and I'm a big person for some kind of national service requirement, something, so that, we have a sense of what we share, what we, our responsibility to one another. And I'd like to hear, how you...
From both or just one?
Yeah, from both.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want to start this?
Well,
First.
I hear two different things there, right? So, right. So one is about the fact that I think many people move to our community because we have this rich, diverse population. You are right that our schools do not necessarily. I'll talk about the high school. We do not have the type of integration that we would like. That is very much a a goal of the high school, and I think of the entire district, to ensure that all our students have the same type of opportunities. And it's not about so much about opportunities, but things happen along the way, and then when you end up in an AP physics class, you look around and this does not look like the rest of the school. And it's very, very much on our radar. It's not something that can be addressed in 12th grade when they're taking Physics C. It needs to be addressed earlier. We as a high school are very, very cognizant of this and working very, very hard to ensure that students, when they're entering into 9th grade, are given the same chances and are given, in certain cases, assistance to ensure that they remain in certain, we have very little tracking, so I don't want to use that word, but at a certain point there is an honors math class, and we want to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. This is not a quick fix, as you can imagine, because you're talking about your children who I imagine graduated a little bit ago, but it is something, I think it's something that, you know, again, when I got to the district 15 or 16 years ago, I don't really think this was being discussed very much. Now it is very, very, very much on the radar, and you know, I want the AP American History classes, I want the physics classes to represent exactly what the population of the high school looks like. It's going to take us some time to get there.
Thank you. It's a little bit different at Rhinebeck, and I think it's because of the design, because of our size. When you have a smaller population, kids are mixing together a lot more. And a couple of the things that Liz alluded to have been put in place, and it's probably the difference of 20 years tenure and someone who's just started there. But we do have open enrollment for all of our AP classes and honors classes. So that means that kids have opportunity and should be encouraged. But that's kind of minor. The talent development model, which I referred to before and really addresses, I think that was Jane who brought it up before, really mixes kids together based on talent, like-minded kids with like interests. So you push the kids together a little bit more. But if I came to Rhinebeck from 20 years in New York City as a teacher and administrator, coming from a very large system to something very small. And very quickly I realized the advantages of something that was the size of our high school. It was personalized. The research now speaks to smaller environments, really addressing the needs of all children. Children don't get lost in there, and they have to work together. So whether it's on an athletic team, or we just finished our high school musical, which 150 kids have participated in, both cast and crew. So you put all kinds of kids together across the grades, and they have to support each other. It forces the design, just by design, it forces the kind of involvement that you want across the various kinds of groups and people.
Time is at near, and we'll have just maybe 2 more questions. So, Mary Lee? I'm sorry I'm announcing you. You have to stop.
Mary Lee Barrage, had 4 kids graduate. Very, very proud of the system in so many ways, and some of the things that have been said here I just think are so impressive. My great concern, and this whole thing about bringing kids together, the drama, the music come to light right away. What's your greatest worry about budget cuts? Where are the areas that give you the greatest concern, and that if we as a community can help do whatever we can to be aware and to work for some of the great worries we have, that there will be cuts, and that's my greatest fear.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you said something about art and music, because that hasn't come up. That didn't come up. It was part of what I had at the bottom of my list when I got my wrap-up notice. So I do think that you know, to be a 21st century learner and citizen, I think it's critical that people understand the arts, have an appreciation for the arts. I thought the New York Times this week in the Week in Review, I'm sure many of you saw the various different articles on writing. You know, Jhumpa Lahiri talking about what a sentence means to her. I just thought it was so beautiful. And so for students to understand the value of a beautiful sentence or the value of an incredible piece of art and what went into creating that piece of art, I personally think that that's just as important as knowing physics. And I do think, I mean, one of the reasons, again, that I feel incredibly fortunate about where I've ended up is that I do think that the board and the community agrees with me. So in terms of, my concern and worries for the budget, in the future, I think that the most important thing is to hold on to as many of our teachers as possible. And as far, so I think that the teaching is it's the cornerstone, and I don't think that there's any disagreement on that out there in the community or with people who are going to have to make these decisions around the budget. And teaching goes to the drama and the art and physics and English. And I would not want to have to make that decision. And I don't think I'm being asked to make that decision, so I'm very happy about that, about where to cut regarding that. But I think that they're just as valuable.
I would echo that, and thank you again for bringing that up, because I think what defines all of our schools in this area in Southern Westchester is the fact that we are inclusive and that we have opportunities for all kinds of kids. And as we begin to look at budgets and either reduce or eliminate programs, we are reducing or eliminating an opportunity for certain kids. So music and art, certainly, absolutely. Athletics, absolutely, we need it there. All of our extracurricular clubs, our trips that we go on with kids, maintaining a rigorous program for our kids with various opportunities for them to grow and learn. We've worked hard in this area to develop the kinds of programs that support our students and support where they're going and what they need for the future. So I say it I stand on that with you. We don't want to see anything go, because when it goes, there will be a group of students who will have less of an opportunity to be able to thrive. Thank you.
And with that, I'd just like to make one comment in regard to that. Both of the boards of Rhinebeck and the board of Mamaroneck have open public sessions. All concerns in terms of the community. If you can't make the physical meeting, I think they're all televised through LMC-TV. But whatever concerns that you do have in regard to your children or the future of our children, one of the things that's amazing about sometimes in Mamaroneck, you can say my child or our children, and hopefully the vocabulary is our children. When I hear somebody like a Jane Loren speak, she's never talking about her sons. I was fortunate enough to have both of those guys, Jakey and Sam. And the thing is that she was never one to voice her child or her children. It was our children. And when you hear people who are concerned in the community talking about our children in our community, when you have those board sessions, go and speak for our children. And then you don't have to worry about the budget cuts or anything else, because you're a proponent of quality education. And with that, we'd like to thank you for our forum and to our guest speakers.
Thank you very much. Thank
Thank you all for coming. It was really a terrific presentation. Thank you. On a very high note we're ending. I also want to just remind everyone that I guess it was last fall, we had our county supervisor, county executive, Rob Astorino, speak. He had to leave rather quickly, and therefore we submitted, in addition, some questions that we did not have time to ask at that session.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
He has responded, and we're going to send out via email to all of those who gave us their email address. We're going to send you next day or so those questions and the answers that he gave us. So it's sort of a follow-up to our meeting in the fall. I think you'll all be interested in that too. So look for our email the next day or so for that too. Thank you all for coming. And we'll, yes. Oh, and the election, of course. Make sure you vote. You're part of the village of Larchmont.
20 years.
And we'll see you next
1990.
month on the third Tuesday of the month. Bye-bye.
A million points, like,
I know.